Next on Arizona 360, after Red for Ed, persisting challenges in the classroom.
We're teachers. We're like any other group of professionals. We're very diverse.
Overcoming obstacles in southern Arizona's largest school district.
We do not have the funding to take care of all of the needs of the very school that we are sitting in.
Plus, vulnerable seats in the state legislature.
Can Democrats take control of the Senate? Can Democrats pick up some seats in the House?
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thank you so much for joining us. With education funding a prominent issue on the ballot, this week we revisit Red for Ed. The historic movement led Arizona lawmakers to approve more money for teacher raises. Recently, we assembled a panel of teachers from southern Arizona to ask what challenges remain in the classroom. Combined, their experience totals nearly a century. They come from major districts in the Tucson metro area, plus a charter school in the Bava-Kiveri district on the Tohono O'odham Reservation. Our discussion began with a question about teacher pay. So according to the Arizona Auditor General, the average teacher in the state of Arizona makes about $48,000 a year. Show of hands, are any of you in that, are you the average?
My base salary is below the average, but with all the additional things such as a leadership position I've taken on in the district, coaching the soccer team, and doing after school tutoring program, that pushes my salary right close to that range.
Holly, you also raised your hand.
My district starts teachers at 51.
Okay.
And so that's one of the biggest things out there. And I think because, we are way out there on the nation to get teachers to work themselves.
Red for Ed happened last academic year. Show of hands, how many of you participated? All right. How many of you think it will make a difference going into this academic year?
I'm hopeful.
I hope so.
Yes.
All right, let's start with you, Rebecca. What do you think?
I hope that there's been an awareness level that has increased among parents and among the general community. I hope that people are realizing that there's a real need to fund our schools, and that hopefully they will keep that in mind in November when they're voting for candidates who are willing to do that.
I found the movement also helped raise awareness amongst my fellow teachers who were unable to, who had never seen how things worked at the Capitol. Myself, I didn't even know how divided it seemed at times.
Lisa, over in the charter schools, some charter schools remained open, carry the same weight?
Our participation had a different shape. We were, doing events at the school and trying to educate our students at the same time as some of us were joining the Capitol. And it's, sort of like God or Tinkerbell. I mean, if you believe in it, it will come, right? So we have to kind of keep believing.
Lawrence, I gather you were somewhat skeptical of what maybe the end game is.
Well, I really was. I looked at it and I felt to myself, yeah, we're going to the state, but I want everybody to realize the state does not cut us a check. Our checks come from the local districts. Part of what upset me most, and I just want to explain to everybody, I missed 20 days of instruction with my algebra students last year in my class. And with all the district required testing we had to do and then being locked out, really felt bad that all those days missed. So I was really upset that we didn't really start turning it locally and acting locally to get the people involved locally. I mean, that's where we can have the biggest impacts on our salaries.
If education is such a big part of this state, what do voters need to consider about the people in front of the students?
One of the misconceptions, I think, is that it's being a political movement and we're all a bunch of left-wing, we want to socialize everything and that. We're teachers. We're like any other group of professionals. We're very diverse.
When I feel that things have gotten to a point where I need to actually walk out, it's because I see that my children are hurting. And I think that sometimes there's been this focus on teacher pay, teacher pay, teacher pay. And while that is a part of it, I think people forget that it's not really all about the teachers, it's all about the kids.
We love working with kids and love what we do. Like, we didn't get into it to be rich, and I think sometimes those type of comments hurt.
Outside of salaries, what are some of the challenges that you face in the classroom?
It's tough. Like as I said before, you have to have a strong constitution because you will see the stories that you will hear and things that come around. You have to be the positive adult experience that a child will have every day. If you go into work every day thinking that, you're going to make the kids feel better. Our job is to uplift them and bring them up.
Some of them just don't want to be in a school for some reason. Like, it doesn't fit or it doesn't gel with their personality. And so, to help them overcome that, like fear or resistance to something that's very new and unfamiliar, It definitely takes a lot of patience.
Anybody just want to dip out and say, I'm done with this, I can do something else with my future?
Yeah,
Guilty.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
When I was working at CVS, my second job, you know, just working with kids all day and then not getting home till 10:30 at night, I was just so exhausted. And I kind of felt, I guess, disrespected in a way, because I feel like we work so hard and going to college ourselves, and just, you know, teachers we weren't getting the respect that we deserve. I was always telling my husband, I'm like, if I can find a school that pays teachers what they're worth, I'll teach forever. And, you know, and I found that with my district, I'm very thankful. But it wasn't easy for me in the beginning.
I've had those moments, especially after very emotional days. I spent most of my teaching career in elementary school, and 5 years ago I moved into the middle school. And I love it, but boy, those kids have very different issues. And so I never had to deal with children showing me cuts, self-inflicted cuts up their arms, children telling me their plans to kill themselves. And when you have 3 or 4 of those in, you know, 2-week time period, there are days I would come home and just say, I can't do this anymore. I just don't know if I have it in me. And then of course my husband says, well, somebody's got to do it, and you love them and they love you. And I'd pick myself up and I'd go right back in, you know. And I have great colleagues that I work with too. So I have that kind of support system there.
There's a perception from people who are outside the education industry that you have it easy, or that you get your summers off, you get holidays off. How do you guys really feel about that when people from the outside say that?
It would be easy to walk away from the profession if I just didn't love the population that I work with and the things that I get to do. And some days I come home and I say, I can't believe I got paid to do this today. We played Scrabble, we learned how to spell some new words, and we hit this milestone. So yeah, sometimes I do feel like I got it easy, and then I have to pay the bills.
And I want to make this clear, the two of you are happily married and educators.
Yes.
And that can be a challenge financially sometimes.
Very much so. It's very hard on a 2-teacher income. We've both been teaching long enough that we do okay. We bought our house long ago enough that we aren't, over our heads on a mortgage. My husband's very handy, so we don't have to pay for plumbers and electricians and things, and my father-in-law as well. But when big things arise and there's just no money to do it, when you have to decide, do we get a new roof or do we get braces for our kids? Because there's not money for both. It can be very frustrating and very difficult.
If I could wave a magic wand and put a dollar amount and just fix education in Arizona, is that enough to take it to the next level, to make your jobs more manageable, to really influence these kids?
Just the financial question, it's the foundation that's needed. I mean, if we go back to pre-recession spending on education and lift it up to the pre-recession level plus whatever inflation would factor in between those years and now, then we have a foundation equivalent with some of the states that we are not stacking up to. So no, there's so much more than money behind a good education, but it's what we need to stand on.
But if we look at where we fall behind, teacher to student or student to teacher ratio, we're one of the worst in the nation. That's cured with money for more teachers. We have a shortage of teachers. Again, if I can make more money teaching next door, I'm going to go next door. We have outdated materials. That's not free. So, again, like you said, there are a lot of other things involved. But boy, being able to fund it adequately would sure be a great step in the right direction.
And to tag along to that, it's really a technology piece. Our students we have now need to have technology. And everybody else has to understand now, everybody who went to school in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, your child is not going to be just happy just doing everything pen and pencil. You want to really engage them. You got to have that technology piece there. And there really needs to be a big push in our districts. That's why when you see wasteful spending in the district, it just drives you nuts.
We initially came up with this idea during the Red for Ed movement, and we're grateful that all of you are sharing your experiences. We want to know, though, what is next? Where does it go from here? Because we knew there were rallies in Phoenix at the Capitol, and everyone said, remember in November. Here we are in the fall, we're approaching an election. Is it really over?
I think that's a personal thing for each teacher. I look at my own school site where I was the site liaison for For Ed, and we have teachers who are still very active painting their car windows, organizing walk-ins, talking to friends and neighbors, going to political events, but you can feel that the momentum is not quite where it was before.
I totally agree, and like she mentioned how maybe teachers are not like as fully into it. We kind of calmed down a bit, but I mean, I have faith in teachers, to bring it back up because November is basically here.
As someone who works in a sector where there's a lot of public misinformation, I think that public education is probably just as important at this point as the education we're doing in the classrooms if this movement is really to build some muscle and make a political impact in the profound ways that it seems to want to.
I think it's, we should start on your ballot locally. Look at your local elections first, and then go all the way up through to your state and get to know them and really ask them, for, the help that we need to keep our schools.
Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After hearing from educators, we wanted a clearer picture of what it's like to run a district post For Ed. Gabriel Trujillo is in his second year as superintendent of the Tucson Unified School District, Arizona's second largest district with more than 40,000 students and nearly 90 schools and programs. Our discussion at Sam Hughes Elementary began with how he's settled into his role so far.
We were able to do some really key things year one, and probably the biggest thing that we were able to do was really get to know the organization intimately and deeply from the school level, and to really get on the ground and say, all right, I understand what our teachers are saying because I want to hear from them. I'm talking to them. I understand what our bus drivers are saying because I see the conditions of their buses. I understand why the parents are a little upset with the district. So a lot of listening year one. Now, what we were able to do here in year two was to implement some key systemic reforms in areas of urgency, areas that we really instantly needed to get the district out of the weeds and out of the danger zone to get it into a healthier area, certainly in the area of academics when we talk about achievement on AZ merit, also in the area of school safety, which was another hot topic issue that I heard my first 30 days on the job, and certainly with regard to the state of our desegregation plan.
On the issue of desegregation, the district made some recent strides to come out from a 2013 court order stemming from a more than 40-year-old class action lawsuit filed on behalf of African American and Mexican American students and employees. Last month, a federal judge said the district achieved partial unitary status in key areas. TUSD plans to meet all of the requirements by next September and bring an end to the case. Desegregation is a cloud that has been looming over this school district for some time. This year you received some good news or headed in a positive direction. How do you view moving forward after, given that was such a large part of the way this district had to operate for so long?
When our team came in 2 years ago, we made a commitment to the court and to all of our stakeholders that we weren't going to aggressively fight or argue in court about whether or not we should have been under court supervision. We were going to aggressively comply. So where the unitary status plan would ask us to do A, B, or C at a school, we were going to aggressively do A, B, C, and D, and E, and F. And I think the record shows that. In the first pages of the order, the judge compliments the district for a change in attitude. And that is exactly what the court is recognizing, that we have an aggressive commitment to compliance.
Other challenges persist, like declining enrollment for the 11th straight year. Trujillo says between 700 and 1,200 kids leave each year, causing the district to miss out on tax dollars that would have followed them into the classroom.
The computers, the iPads, the uniforms, the musical instruments, the field trips, all of those magical aspects of what makes a K-12 experience wonderful for kids is tied to funding. So you have the enrollment piece. You also have our continued and well-publicized and documented challenges with facilities and with capital funding. We sit in Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes is a school that is decades old. It is a school constructed from the early part of the 20th century. It has a lot of needs. We do not have the funding to take care of all of the needs of the very school that we are sitting in. And by that, we're basically telling the students in the community, of Sam Hughes that, yes, we value you, yes, we are thankful that you have chosen the Tucson Unified School District, but facilities-wise, capital funding-wise, you are getting less.
Here we are well into the 2018 academic school year. You're missing a few teachers from the classroom. How have you made that work?
Well, it's bittersweet because we, over the last 7 years, we hit a 7-year low. We opened up the school year with 81 vacancies, which is the lowest we've been in several years. Now, that's the bitter end of sweet because you're still down 81 teachers. And we do know that the most important variable in our ability to move schools and the district forward and increase student achievement is the presence of a highly qualified teacher.
The district is already doing things differently to attract and retain teachers, like doubling stipends for math and special ed teachers, and bringing qualified instructors from India to teach math and science. Trujillo also says the governing board passed a salary package that raised pay by about 10%. He says there's steps in the right direction, but more work is needed to improve academic scores. On the achievement scale, there are a handful of schools that are failing and others that are not performing probably to your standards. You've been on the record saying, I want to switch this around and I want to do it quickly. How exactly is that possible?
Well, we've instituted some systemic reforms in the areas of instruction, certainly in the areas of mathematics and English language arts instruction, that we did during the 17-18 school year when we received our scores for 16-17. The increases that we've shown as a system show that the lights have come back on. There are 9 tested grade levels for AZ merit, okay? And the Tucson Unified School District, we showed between 4 and 8% improvement across the system, and certainly not saying that the work is done, because when you look at our performance, we are still pretty much across the board under the state averages. But to be able to show a 4 to 8% improvement in 1 year's time in 5 or 6 of the 9 tested grade levels is a testament to the effectiveness of the reform efforts that we've implemented, and more importantly, a testament to the efforts of our amazing teachers that have taken that challenge on.
6 is 3,400, 7 is 70.
A typical week for Trujillo includes multiple visits to schools, where he can see firsthand how systemic changes trickle into the classroom and where there's room for growth.
Parents want their child attending an A or B school. Regardless of what we think about the state's A through F accountability system for school quality, it's the label that's placed on your school. It's a lot of times going to be a decisive factor in whether parents come into the district. It's the right work because it's why we're here, is to increase student learning and a school's effectiveness, to increase student learning. And it's also tied to enrollment.
Early ballots go out on Wednesday. Voters will get the chance to weigh in on a state law expanding Arizona's voucher program. In 2017, state lawmakers passed a law gradually giving more students access to Empowerment Scholarship Accounts, or ESAs. Those are public funds students can use for education-related expenses. A yes vote on Proposition 305 allows that the 2017 law take effect. A no vote voids the law and maintains existing requirements. We asked Arizona Daily Star education reporter Hank Stevenson about pushback surrounding an expansion.
I think most people are looking at the Empowerment Scholarship Account expansion as just simply fewer dollars available for public schools, and that's the real concern.
Now, initially these were intended for children with disabilities, foster kids, military. If this expands, does it open the umbrella to cast a wider net for a variety of students?
Yeah, it would allow every student in the state, or I guess I should say any student in the state, in no longer having those restrictions of being disabled or a military family or going to DNF schools. This would allow it to be anybody could apply, but there's still a cap in place on how many of them would be given out, and that cap will continue to grow over the next couple of years. And this is something at the Capitol, the cap was a compromise, and it's a compromise that many people viewed skeptically, that there will be a cap in place for the next couple of years, and once we hit that cap, if we hit that cap, it'll just be removed by the legislature. And so it would open it up to all 1.1 million, or continually increasing the cap as the program becomes more and more successful, or more people are trying to take advantage of it.
Now, in stories like this one in agencies, it's not uncommon for there to be a rotten tomato that just taints the whole bunch. There are families who are benefiting from this. We heard Governor Ducey mention that this last week during a debate. What is the argument for the families that say the dollars are following the child to his or her education? Why is that frowned upon?
I think, even a lot of Democrats will say that we don't want to get rid of this program completely, that, under limited circumstances for students who really can't get a good education in their neighborhood school or a school, a public school around their house, be that charter or another kind of traditional district school, that we need to have some kind of an option to provide them with the chance at an education that suits them. I haven't heard anybody in a very long time talk about getting rid of this for disabled kids. And I've been asking people on the campaign trail, especially Democrats, as we're talking about, most of them are against expanding it. So the question kind of becomes, should we get rid of it altogether? And nobody says that anymore. A lot of people have kind of come around and seen the good that it can do for those students that really need it. But they're saying, look, if we just start giving it to everyone, there's going to be nothing left for the traditional public schools.
Did this movement gain or lose any steam following Red for Ed this spring?
I think that Red for Ed and Save Our Schools, the campaign opposing the initiative or opposing the referendum, the voucher expansion, I think that they've been feeding off each other. So Save Our Schools came first. This referendum started last year. And there was a big push. It was a very grassroots thing from a couple of people who had been at the Capitol, teachers, parents who wanted to oppose this, and kind of got together a group, were miraculously able to get the number of signatures they needed in a very short time frame in the middle of the summer. It's very hard to force a referendum on a law that the legislature passes. They did that, and I think that kind of the Red for Ed movement saw that and said, hey, look, this may be a good time to strike while the iron is hot. And vice versa. I think that a lot of the people who started with Red for Ed kind of said, oh, there's this other Save Our Schools anti-voucher initiative going on that maybe they weren't aware of before getting brought into the fold with Red for Ed. And since the Red for Ed initiative, Invest in Education, has been kicked off the ballot, I think a lot of people, teachers, activists who are kind of in that crowd are focusing their energy on the No on Proposition 305 campaign. And honestly, I would be shocked if that passed, if the law was upheld. I've talked to a lot of Republican lawmakers who at this point are saying, well, I voted for it, but now that it's on the ballot, I don't necessarily support that law.
Okay, Hank, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Lorraine.
Races for governor in the U.S. House and Senate have soaked up attention in recent weeks. However, all seats in the state legislature are also up for a vote. Talk about a blue wave sweeping the midterm also extends to local races. Christopher Conover discussed the likelihood with the Arizona Capital Times' Ben Giles in Phoenix.
Can Democrats either pick up a significant chunk of seats in the House of Representatives and more specifically in the Senate? Perhaps can they split the chamber? Perhaps can they take control of it? It's been talked about in the past. They've always consistently fallen short, and the split in the Senate in particular has remained in favor of Republicans, with talk of perhaps a quote blue wave with a slew of Democratic candidates running in every legislative district possible. There is renewed chatter again this year that, could this happen?
Does it really come down to just a couple of races?
It does. There's only so many districts in Arizona that are considered competitive, and that's just because of the way districts are drawn. There are some rural districts that are solidly red. There are urban districts that are solidly blue, and neither party really stands a chance of tipping the scales in their favor in those kinds of districts. But Legislative District 10 in Tucson is one where there has been traditionally a little bit of room for a split. Representative Todd Clodfelter had kind of stolen a seat from Democrats who had controlled both legislative seats from District 10 for a number of years. That's something called the single shot strategy, where by running as the only candidate for your party, you might stand a better chance of encouraging voters to vote for you and then not vote for anybody else. Democrats are hoping to beat back that strategy this year with a wave of enthusiasm hopefully recapture both seats for their party.
The end of the legislative session, we had the whole Red for Ed movement, tens of thousands of teachers outside and supporters outside the Capitol and inside the Capitol. Are we going to see that movement translate into legislative races in November, do you think?
There are certain districts where teachers have decided to not just become active as far as protesting and politicking at the Capitol, but also just running for office. And there is hope, at least among the Red for Ed movement, that they can transition sort of away from the Invest in Ed initiative, the ballot measure that was thrown off the ballot by the Supreme Court that would have raised income taxes on wealthy Arizonans to pay for an education funding increase. They're hoping that anger and frustration over the Supreme Court's decision to bar that from being eligible to be voted on in November can translate to a swell of support for candidates who vow to try and increase funds for education.
When it comes to legislative races, is there anything we've missed that the voters out there need to know about before early ballots go out really in less than a month at this point?
Politicos like myself are going to be watching to see can Democrats take control of the Senate? Can Democrats pick up some seats in the House? But I would just say I will believe it when I see it, because this has been the narrative in every election cycle. Can Democrats seize control? Can Democrats split the chamber? They haven't even split the chamber since 2001 and 2002. That was the last time there was a 15-15 tie in the Senate. And certainly if that happens, in a matter of speaking, all hell will break loose, because there isn't a lot of institutional knowledge left around to know what went down back then. How do we legislate? How do we govern in this type of environment? And that sort of split has an impact not just on the Senate itself, but the governor's office and the House, who have to work closely as the three main bodies who are responsible for drafting a budget. That's the sort of thing that could have dramatic implications for the way the state legislates and the way the state budgets in 2019.
And a reminder, this Tuesday, Arizona Public Media will host a CD2 debate between Democrat Ann Kirkpatrick and Republican Leah Marquez Peterson. I'll serve on a panel of journalists alongside our partners from KJZZ, the Arizona Daily Star, and the Arizona Republic. You can watch the debate live at 7 p.m. on PBS 6. And that's all for now. Thanks so much for joining us. To get a look at next week's program, visit us on social media and let us know what you think. We'll see you next week.